Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Thursday, December 26th, 2024. I'm your host, George Kurt, joined by the one and only Cody Roadcap. Did you have a good holiday, Cody?
I did. I enjoyed football on Christmas, although I kind of agree with LeBron when he said Christmas is our day. And that Warriors-Lakers game was better than anything the NFL put on the field on Christmas Day.
Well, we'll have a little quick talk about those Christmas games from the NFL, but you have to believe if Roger Goodell was willing to go out there and schedule 2 games on a Wednesday, which is probably the hardest thing for the NFL to do, it's over. They're going to schedule games every Christmas now.
Yeah, it's for sure. It might get interesting if they do the Tuesday, like in 6 years, whenever it's back on a Tuesday. Just because of would that be the addition of the week prior kind of thing? But I think Christmas is here to stay for the NFL at least.
I think so too. It's going to be interesting to see how they work it next year. I think it's going to be a lot like Thanksgiving with it being on a Thursday. But we'll talk about that as we get into the offseason, hear the schedule and such. In the meantime, we're talking fantasy championship this week. Some of your championships already started yesterday, so we'll talk about that and we'll give an update on the Couch GMs World Cup. Make sure you follow us at the Couch GMs on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok to get even more than you do from the show. And you can hit us in the DMs with your fantasy questions if you miss us live Mondays and Thursdays at 6:30 East. Cody, instead of sitting back, relax, and chat, why don't we start off updating the Couch GMs World Cup? Tricolor background up. We're going to update you the bracket and show you who made it to their championship games starting in Group A.
Yeah, and it's definitely different this year because 2 games are already played. So
Yes.
some people have gotten out to a head start. But in Group A, we have Sean versus Bree. George, you live with Bree. Did she have any action on day one?
She did not, but Sean did. I think Sean's 4 players in already, 3 or 4 at 44 points.
Was Lamar Jackson one of them?
No, CJ Stroud was one of them. Not a good
Ooh.
start for him there. But Derrick Henry was also one of them. So
Definitely a tough start as well.
very mixed right there.
Sean and Bree are getting ready to fight it out for the battle. And like we said, everyone besides Sean is rooting for Bree because she currently leads the wild card spot too. So they would love for her to win, clinching an automatic buy-in in year 4 and giving someone else a shot at the wild card after next season. Why don't we go to Group B? That's my group.
Sounds good. Give me a second to hit a couple of buttons and go to the Group B bracket. There we are. Cody, I like seeing your name there still. That was a good job last week to get into the championship game.
Yeah, it was. It was a tough matchup, but it was a good one. I get to play Reed this week. Reed's had one of the best teams all year, so no easy feat. You see me at the 1 seed, him at the 3 seed. Throw that out the window. Reed has a really good team. We've had one player play. It was Reed's quarterback, Lamar Jackson. That's why I asked. I was curious. So he has about a 30-point lead going into the Saturday slate of games versus me and my whole lineup. The only good news is I do have Josh Allen. So if there was a quarterback that you feel could put a 30 points up to match that, it would have to be Josh Allen.
Josh Allen needs to make up a little ground this week to be fantasy playoff MVP to go along with his NFL MVP that he's running for, along with Lamar, who's making a strong case down the stretch.
Yeah, Lamar's making a great case down the stretch for the MVP. So why don't we just say the winner of me versus Reed? He has Lamar. I have Josh Allen. The winner, their quarterback gets the NFL MVP. That's going to be the deciding factor.
I like it. We're going to call it right here. We're going to take that vote right out of our postseason awards that are coming up probably next week or after next week that we do every year. And we'll see who the NFL MVP is going to be. Quick shout out to Reed, who is staying on me saying, why am I not putting up scores on the brackets? Because he's trying to brag about how many points he's putting up. So good luck, Cody.
Yeah, I don't feel great. I'm in 2 championships, this one and our league of record, and I would consider myself the underdog in both. But Cinderella stories do exist.
You just got to get in, and you just got to get to the final.
And then your group.
Group C, and a couple of clicks here. Cole and Anthony making it to the final. I feel like I was watching the cracks form on Nick's team for a while here. Not a fantastic performance from him to get Cole through to the final. Anthony, the hot team, keeps going. The 2-bye teams in this league, I think, kind of got out to leads early and started to cruise, and it was not good.
No, that's a great point. Because this is the only league where at least one of the bye teams didn't make the final. So shout out to Group C for fighting along, and best of luck to Cole and Anthony.
Yes, sir. That wraps up the Couch GM's World Cup recap. Why don't we start talking about how this week's gone so far? Sit back, relax, and chat. We mentioned 2 games happening yesterday on a Wednesday. Chiefs Steelers and Ravens Texans. Start off quick little talk about Chiefs Steelers here as the Chiefs lock up the 1 seed in the AFC.
They did. I think it's going to be a great debate, which we don't have to spend the time now talking about it because we got a lot to get through on today's show. But will they rest players, and will they not? Will they play people in Week 18? Because 24 days would go between yesterday and their first game if they decide not to play anybody in Week 18. That might be a little bit too long. But that Chiefs offense the last 2 weeks, I don't know if it's Hollywood Brown coming back, giving them a little bit of a different dynamic or what, started coming along. They're starting to play better. Patrick Mahomes has cut down on the interceptions. This Chiefs team is doing what the Chiefs do. They start to get hot at the right time, and they're looking like a team nobody wants to face.
It's amazing. Mahomes' playoff ankle syndrome is it spreads to the entire team, I think. But on the flip side of that, the Steelers are not peaking at the right time. They are now dropped 3 in a row, lost control of the division to the Ravens, who then came back and won. We'll talk about the game in a second. That they look like they could be a 1 and done in the 5 seed after being 10-3.
Yeah, they're definitely off to a rough start. Russell Wilson had some inconsistent throws. We've seen that all season. And we've said this team has played better than anyone has expected. We've compared it to when they started out in 11-0 and were 1 and done in the playoffs. Like they play better, similar to how we just talked about in the Couch GM's World Cup. Nick and Jim got out to a hot start, but you start to see the cracks. You're starting to see that now and unfold with the Steelers. And the way it's lining up, depending on how things go through Week 18, we could see Steelers Texans round 1. And based on the Christmas Day performance, that's slotted in for that first game because that's going to be the least fascinating game of the weekend.
Crazy to think that would be. But now looking at it, that's exactly how it's lining up in my eyes too. Steelers having major flashbacks to 2020 when they were the most fraudulent 12-0 team in NFL history.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see. And then their counterpart in their division, who they have now lost control of, the Baltimore Ravens, looked great. Now, granted, it was the Texans. Texans didn't look great against they only put up 2 points on a safety.
And it wasn't even scoregami. I was super depressed.
It was a first half scoregami.
It was. I didn't know there was even halftime scoregami. Can I get a second website for that?
We need it. But
yeah,
the Ravens have looked good. And you mentioned at the top of the show, I think we might have started to crown Josh Allen MVP too early.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know the Ravens had a little bit of a law, but this week for Josh Allen, how does he respond after his down performance? And then next week, if the Ravens can win their division, I think it's going to be a really fascinating conversation. And Saquon's still in there as long as he has a chance to break that record.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Eagles and the other NFC competitors this week. We'll talk about that as we go through to see if the Eagles are even going to play starters in Week 18. And that would hurt Saquon's chances at getting 2,000 in a record. But for real, the Lamar Jackson MVP debate is really heating up because I know Tyler in our group chat was talking about how, Josh Allen's not leading in anything. How is he potentially MVP? But when you look at it, Lamar is actually leading in things. And he's having the best statistical season of his career, and he's a 2-time MVP. So there's a lot of argument to go around for him still.
Yeah, it'll come down to where you finish statistically versus, the true. How much do you value the word valuable, and how much Josh Allen has rallied his troop, got his teams to, play at elite levels. And I mean, you take down the Lions one week, but then you come back and barely beat the Patriots. How do you
Yeah.
respond? I think is going to be a big question mark for his MVP case.
Most valuable player versus most statistical player is going to be how the people are going to vote.
But, that was the 2 games that already happened. And we got games on Saturday. Thursday, we're going to talk to about the end of the show. Sunday night, as always. Monday night, at least it's only a single game. But why don't we talk about these Saturday games as we preview the games? And we start Chargers and the Patriots, the team that just gave the Bills a run for the money. The Chargers, West Coast, coming east. Granted, it's not at 1 o'clock because or is it at 1 o'clock? It is.
That is at 1 o'clock.
It's at
West
1
Coast
o'clock.
coming east at 1 o'clock a day early.
A day early. The Chargers are, they've been up and down. Some weeks they look great, some weeks they haven't. The big news out of this week is that J.K. Dobbins is listed as questionable to come back. Also, Gus Edwards is ruled out. So it won't be, if Dobbins is back, I think he's right back in your lineup against this Patriots team. And then on with the Patriots side, you have to look at their boundary wide receivers with Christian Gonzalez out there. So Quentin Johnston's probably not a guy you want to flex this week because he'll get matched up a lot. And I think that bodes well for Ladd McConkey, who plays predominantly in the slot.
Definitely. But I do know these Patriots teams like to take away your best weapon, and Ladd McConkey can be considered that guy at this point. It's going to be interesting to see how this Patriots defense plays it. With that being said, I'm not shying away from Ladd McConkey in fantasy for any reason like that.
No, I've been playing him too, and this has nothing to do with the game, but I did see a sports book had put out odds on Tyreek Hill's next team because they think he might get traded in the offseason, and the Los Angeles Chargers are the destination. And I was thinking him with Justin Herbert on that team to take off the top. I think that would be a lot of fun, and had me thinking, let's see what happens this offseason. But we got a lot to get to before we talk offseason football.
Man, you're getting me hyped up for a Tyreek Hill discussion and then pulling it right out from under me. But we have an interesting playoff scenario game going on here. Broncos at Bengals. Because if the Bengals are going to get in, they need a lot of help. One of those things is the Broncos losing out in this matchup, obviously head to head. Bengals are rallying as of late. So playing for their lives in this game.
Yeah, it'll be a tough matchup. I don't think the weather is supposed to be great. So you got Pat Surtain probably going to follow around Jamar Chase. Will he have – this will be a game for Jamar Chase, as good as he's been. He's going up against one of the best. How will he have an impact week this week in a potential weather game? And the Broncos, they have another team that looks good, and now they've started to show some cracks as well. They need to win to get in. Luckily, they have the Chiefs next week, who might not play anybody, but it starts this week against the Bengals. And if you can't beat the Bengals, then maybe your playoffs hope shouldn't be that high.
Definitely, and they're overperforming with the rookie quarterback. But spinning this to fantasy really quick, one of the people that I'm considering for a flex spot right now is Courtland Sutton. I might be too late to pull him out because my other option was Zay Flowers. Kind of glad I did not play Zay Flowers, but he's somebody who I've had a hard time putting into my lineups, even on some of these teams that I have in championships. But he's been top 15 wide receiver so far. So good matchup. Just talk me into being like, yeah, you'd have to play him.
Yeah, I mean, you already said you didn't play Zay Flowers, so who would you be debating between?
I can pull that up here in 1 second. I don't think there's many other good options on the squad here, though, now.
But, while you look it up, I'm playing Courtland Sutton over Jerry Jeudy with DTR playing. I'm playing Courtland Sutton probably over, Devonta Smith with Kenny Pickett potentially playing. I'm playing him over Adam Thielen versus the Bucks.
So the options I've got are whichever of the Saints running backs plays, Ramondre Stevenson or Quentin Johnston.
Yeah, I'd play him over Quentin Johnston at the wide receiver position, and I'd probably play him over Ramondre at the running backs, and I think the rest you'd play him over on any given week. So for me, Sutton's in your lineup.
How Alvin Kamara has fallen. I know there's injuries to deal with there too, but even yet before that,
I was not really considering Alvin Kamara playing.
That's fair. He would be the one that would make it interesting, but you don't really know how much he's going to go if he does go. Saints offense is atrocious at the moment, and with
Yeah.
him being banged up and them being out of it, it doesn't seem to make sense to play him for air bulk touches, even if he goes.
I think there's a chance he does play because fun fact, Alvin Kamara's never had a 1,000-yard rushing season,
Oh, wow.
and he's at 952 yards, I think, on the season this year. So I think that they could kind of get him back to try to get him 48 yards over the next 2 weeks, but long-term run, I don't think he is viable, even though it is a great matchup against the Raiders.
Crazier stat. Alvin Kamara's never had a 1,000-yard season, or Russell Wilson's never had an MVP vote.
The Kamara one. You forget how much he does through the air as a pass
It's
catcher.
exactly it. Because he's been top 5 running back multiple times, but a lot of it's pass catching work, yeah.
For sure.
All right, one more game on Saturday. We got the nightcap, which is a good divisional matchup between the Arizona Cardinals and LA Rams. Cardinals not looking good in playoff contention anymore,
They're
but
eliminated.
they are eliminated as of last week, my bad. And they're dealing with running back issues. Both James Conner and Trey Benson are limited participants in practice. I would think if they have Conner go, they're going to expect him to be ready for a workload because there's no reason to push him being out of the playoffs otherwise. But I know a lot of fantasy owners who are kind of relying on him in their fantasy championships are watching this one very closely.
Yeah, the nice thing about the Connor situation is you have him on Saturday and you have all the Sunday slate to adjust if you need to. With that said, the knee injury doesn't look great. They might try to let him go just because, he was practicing on a limited basis. But he's been favoring that knee pretty hard. So I do think there's a chance that he is active, re-aggravates it, or whatnot. But I think out of caution, I would probably look elsewhere for James Conner. But if he does go, it would be hard to bench him because he's probably a guy that got you there.
Exactly, because even last week, he had a fantastic week. So after Trey Benson, say there's no Connor and there's no Benson, we're looking at DJ Dallas. So would you look outside of that team to try to find your replacement at running back, or are you good with going with DJ Dallas if both don't go?
Yeah, or Michael Carter. I would not play either of them. If I don't think the team is worth chasing the points, especially being the Saturday game. I know it's a little bit different because 5 games would have already played at that point, but there's still a ton of games left for Sunday and Monday that I would look elsewhere than trying to chase points for the Cardinals offense.
Maybe we'll try to dig through and find some running backs that can help you out if you have that issue as we go through the Sunday window, starting with the early games. A game that could have been big, but now got flexed out of the 4:00 window for good reason. We got the Dallas Cowboys at the Philadelphia Eagles. Bad news for Jalen Hurts owners. We still have him in DNP with a concussion. It's not looking great for him, but we'll see if he can pull in a limited participation in practice tomorrow. If he does, there's a chance he goes. If not, we're looking at Kenny Pickett, who is a full participant but is dealing with a rib injury and was wearing the flak jacket in practice.
Yeah, I don't think Hurts is going to play.
That's my thought too.
I know there's the concussions, they can come back. But with the Eagles situation where they really can't do anything in the playoff seeding, they're like basically locked into the 2 seed. Hurts coming back early just really, makes his chances for a repeat concussion higher.
Yeah.
And him getting in back-to-back concussions would make his availability for wildcard weekend in doubt. So with that, I know you always want to beat the Cowboys. The Cowboys are eliminated. The Eagles, they're locked into the number 2 seed. I think they're going to give Hurts the week. Like if he was, practicing on Wednesday, they probably would have. But now that he hasn't been able to get to this far in the process, let him sit a week. Let Kenny Pickett, throw it around the yard. The Cowboys, they're without CeeDee Lamb. They finally shutting him down for the season. I know some people have him in fantasy championship games, which kind of stinks. But you just have to go on from there. But with Hurts, let's assume Hurts doesn't go.
Okay.
AJ Brown still in your lineup?
Yes. I think
100%.
Kenny Pickett was trying to find AJ Brown pretty heavily in the past plays they did call for him.
Devonta Smith still in your lineup?
I would say no on that one.
Okay,
I think that's where I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm with you on that as well. If Kenny Pickett's the quarterback, not playing Devonta Smith, I'd still play AJ Brown, and of course Saquon Barkley is in your lineup.
Saquon Barkley's probably going to get a lot of work in this game. Still thinking the Eagles have a chance to be up with the Cowboys eliminated and struggling, and without CeeDee Lamb. And they're going to try to get him a couple extra touches to see if he can get close to that 2,000 in the record. So
for sure. And then real quick before we go on to our next game, I think it is fascinating to look at the playoff clinching scenarios. Doesn't have so much to do with fantasy. But it's weird because we're talking all this week 18 stuff, but there is a path where all 14 teams are locked. The seedings won't be official, but the 14 teams will be locked in place. So just the Eagles clinch the NFC East with a win or a Washington loss. The Lions clinch the NFC North with a win and a Vikings loss. And by clinching that, they'll also clinch the 1 seat in the first round bye. The Rams can clinch the NFC West with a win and a Seattle loss, or a win plus the Rams clinch strength of victory tiebreaker, which would require 4 teams of the following to win: Minnesota, Buffalo, San Francisco, Washington, Cincinnati, and Cleveland. Let's not even worry about that because that's just too much to remember.
yeah.
Or if they tie and Seattle loses. So basically think Rams win, Seattle loses. Their matchup in week 18 doesn't matter. The Rams are in. The Falcons, similar situation. If they're in with a win and a Tampa Bay loss, and the Commanders are in with a win. So I think they'll have a good shot. So that's just the NFC side. And then the AFC side, Denver is winning in, and the Chargers are winning in, or they get in with a Miami loss plus an Indianapolis loss.
So yeah, there's plenty of situations where you can see the wild cards clinch. There was a lot of disparity between top and bottom this year. So I'm not shocked by this, but this is just lining up more and more for that Lions and Vikings game to be the most intriguing game of week 18, because that's going to be for the 1 seed and a bye, unless there's an Eagles win and a Lions and Vikings loss this week. That's the only scenario where the Eagles would have a shot to get to the 1 seed.
Yeah, and the Vikings might lose because they play the Packers.
And the Lions probably not going to lose, but they are playing the 49ers, who played pretty well last week. And we'll talk more about that game on Monday. We'll touch on it before we get out of here today, though.
All right, and we just went through those playoff scenarios, and the one thing we said was the Falcons need to win and the Panthers need to lose, or the Buccaneers need to lose. Well, the Buccaneers play the Panthers. 1:00 game. Panthers have looked better as of late. They're just one of those pesky teams. The Buccaneers have looked good as well. They're inconsistent, especially coming off that loss against the Dallas Cowboys. But in terms of fantasy, Mike Evans is in your lineup.
Yep.
Are you playing Jalen McMillan? I know he's been a guy that's been. Panthers are top 10 against wide receivers. So I know personally,
I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they've been down.
So would you play Jalen McMillan this week?
I would. I mean, I don't think Jalen McMillan's your best option, but I'm not too worried about the fact that it's a red matchup being divisional. Things happen. The Panthers have played some teams tough lately too. Good game against the Chiefs, good game against the Eagles. In a divisional game, I'd expect that to be more the case rather than this being a blowout.
Gotcha. Alrighty. How about the Panthers side? I'll just ask you straight up: McMillan or Adam Thielen?
I'm probably going McMillan, but Adam Thielen's not a horrible play either. Your man there is Chuba, but we knew that.
Right, for sure. I think Chuba is the only guy you feel great playing this week in Carolina. And then you got Mike Evans, McMillan if you need a flex play. I mean, if you're out without CeeDee Lamb, like McMillan might be a good guy and might still be on waivers because you didn't have a great week last week. You did catch the touchdown, but he got a bunch of targets, didn't turn them into catches. So that's always something worth watching as well.
Sorry if you can hear the stressed dog yawning next to me here. We're getting some pets going on here, trying to calm her down.
No worries.
Another divisional matchup coming up. The Bills trying to rebound after a tough divisional game last week against the Patriots. They host the Jets, who have been on the up and up lately.
I don't know. Didn't they lose last week?
They did. You're right. That was a bad game. I'm thinking about 2 weeks ago when they looked fantastic.
But to your point, The Jets one is interesting. I know Rodgers a little bit banged up. Devontae is a little bit banged up. Devontae actually has been DNP the last 2 days. That's one to watch. There's nothing for them to play for. Rodgers said he's definitely playing. So
Rodgers is just out here for fun at this point.
basically, but if he doesn't have Adams, I think that would bode well for Garrett Wilson, because he's kind of in like borderline playable, unplayable at this point. You're probably playing him in a consolation bracket rather than a championship game.
Actually, do have somebody who asked me a question earlier this week. I'll see if I can find it. Who is in a championship game with Garrett Wilson, and he was asking between going Garrett Wilson or Josh Downs. I kind of was leaning Josh Downs before hearing news about Devontae Adams. But if Adams is not going to go and it's going to be Garrett Wilson number one, I think that's your play.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then on the Buffalo Bills side, obviously Josh Allen, James Cook, and then we ask this all the time, which wide receiver are you playing? And then are you playing any of them over Jalen McMillan?
I feel like I still can't get myself to play Shakir, and he was not great last week, but overall he's been very consistent. I'm probably playing McMillan over all of them. The closest is Shakir.
Sach, I think I would agree with you on that one, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the Bills bounce back this week in another divisional matchup.
Definitely. Moving on to the Indianapolis Colts and the New York Giants. And the big news here is Anthony Richardson has not participated in practice yet this week. No DNPs Wednesday and Thursday, but the Colts are optimistic he's going to go. So let's play. If he goes, if he doesn't, where are you going with any of these wide receivers?
I mean, he only threw like 9 times last week in a 38-point performance. So I don't love.
And that was a close game. I mean, not really. They were up and then blew a lead, but ended up being a close game.
I don't love any of the wide receivers with him. Josh Downs would probably be the favorite with Richardson, but again, you have to realize the opportunities aren't going to be there. It's against the Giants, who it could be another big Jonathan Taylor game, could be another game where the defense scores some touchdowns or just holds them to a low scoring game, and one of those quick games where they just run, and we're out of there in a flash. So I don't love any of them. I think Michael Pittman gets interesting if Flacco goes, just because of
that would be interesting.
That's where, because I know in our league of record, Michael Pittman's actually sitting there on the free agency wire. And not that I don't think I would actually pick him up to start him in a playoff game, but I was thinking, I might pick him up after tonight because I don't think I'm starting DeAndre Swift. So once the game kicks off, I'll drop DeAndre Swift, pick up Michael Pittman, just in the event that Flacco plays, I don't get beat by a guy that would be a valuable ad on the waiver wire.
So that's the way to go when you're playing these games. Play defense. You can see kind of like who you're not going to play and who wouldn't come back to like bite you. You can kind of start dropping your handcuffs at this point, because if you don't need them this week, you're not going to need them, at least maybe by game time.
Yeah, or even like if you have any Chiefs players, if you have any Texans players, if you have any Ravens players that didn't make your lineup, if you had Rashad Bateman but you didn't play him, cut him. You don't need him for next week.
Heck, if you had Zay Flowers and didn't play him, you can cut him.
Yeah. I cut Patrick Mahomes in a league because I didn't play him. I wish I did. He had a great day, which didn't see that one coming against that Steelers defense, but hindsight wish I would have played him, but I didn't, so I cut him, and now I don't have to look at that score on my bench.
The only time I would recommend not doing that is if your tiebreaker's bench points and you really think it's going to be that close, but the odds of you actually tying in a decimal league are super low. If you're in a full point league, maybe.
Yeah, I would say a full point league, then you might want to, cut those players later. But in the same instance, you just don't cut them you wait till the game's over, right? Like if you had Patrick Mahomes in your tiebreaker's bench points, okay, I'm not going to cut him. I'm save him on the bench for the points, but I'll still cut every other Chiefs player. Like,
yeah,
it's just a when.
Cut everybody who didn't do well at that point.
Right.
Yeah. That's actually a way to trick the bench points argument. That's something I hadn't thought of before. So thinking on the fly here.
Especially if we're starting to get these more and more games spread out on fantasy championship weekend.
Yes. Which I don't know if this is going to be normal or if there's a lot of this is a Christmas thing, but we normally have had Saturday, Sunday, Monday
I'm
at
going to
least.
guess next year will be 3 Christmas Day games on Thursday. All Thanksgiving.
Definitely. They would rerun the Thanksgiving. I could see it definitely.
2 on Netflix,
But,
1 on Amazon. Streaming day.
oh, how about it? Streaming day. Get your wallets ready, guys, or your free trials with your extra. I didn't say anything. I don't know what you're talking about. We did Colts Giants. We're on to the 2 most exciting games of the 1 o'clock window. I'm just going to say these both together and we can kind of bunch them. Raiders at Saints, Titans at Jaguars. Dueling tank bowls going on here.
Yeah. I mean, it's not great. And in terms of fantasy, like there's not a Saints player I'm playing. Because again, I'm not expecting Alvin Kamara to play. Their offense looked terrible. They're just missing so many pieces. I know the Raiders are a bad defense. The Saints defense plays pretty good. But they're not a great team, but it still would concern me about trying to force like a Madison or Abdullah in my lineup, or maybe a Jacoby Myers, but I could get with a flex play. But I think I even like McMillan over him. Seems like that's gonna be our guy that we're gonna draw our comparisons to. And then in the other game we have
You miss Brock Bowers like you do every week. I just wanted to mention.
Yeah, because I forget he's a Raider, but he is definitely in the lineup. And then on Titans Jaguars, yeah, I know Mason Rudolph is playing, so like Calvin Ridley seems like a safer play, but I mean, he had a touchdown last week. I know you and Snyder have liked Chigo Okonkwo over the last couple of weeks, so if you need a tight end, why the heck not?
That's not even the Titan that I actually am adding straight to my lineup this week, though. And I mean, it's Tyjae Spears. He's had 2 straight 20-point weeks. I have running back troubles with the Kamara Kendre Miller thing. Don't feel super confident in Ramondre Stevenson. So I'm actually in a championship where currently I have Tyjae Spears in my lineup.
Yeah, I think in one league I picked up, I don't know if I'm going to start him, but I picked him up as like a defensive move.
Yes. That's one of the people that would be like, if you got hurt by him, it'd be like, are you kidding me? I lost a championship to Tyjae Spears. But it does take some guts and some desperation to put him actually in your lineup. But he's an option because he's been getting very involved in the pass game, especially with their quarterback troubles. They're looking for a lot of short outlet passes, checkdowns, and he's been converting it.
Yeah, and then on the Jag side, Brian Thomas Jr.
Brian Thomas. We didn't get to Brian Robinson's game yet, but Brian Thomas has been a slam dunk over the last month since he got back fully from that chest injury. He has been a league winner.
Yeah, and then I want to circle back to the Colts game real quick.
Okay.
Because I want to talk about Tyron Tracy Jr. He's an interesting name. He's had, double-digit points 4 out of the last 5 weeks, I believe. Doesn't have like more than like 45 rushing yards over those times, but he gets like 5 targets a game. Does a lot through the air. Malik Neighbors is banged up. I don't think we hit on that in that game. Also, why I wanted to circle back to that as well.
My bad.
So it's all good. But like you're mentioning Tyjae Spears, like would you play him over Tyron Tracy, a guy that's been in people's lineups more consistently, or is that kind of like where you're?
Those two are probably right about at the line. I think I tend to favor the guys that we've seen more of, so I'd probably go Tracy. But I don't think it'd be crazy to say I'd go Spears.
Yeah, it is also worth noting Tracy has not practiced in 2 days with an ankle injury, so that is something else to monitor.
And I'm not touching Devin Singletary. Better believe that.
Yeah, so even if he if he has like a questionable designation or something like that, I might even avoid playing him too, just because the Giants aren't playing for anything.
Yep.
Might avoid him.
And I would say, it's the Sunday 1 o'clock window. You don't have much to worry about. But there's 6 games that would have kicked off before that. It makes it a little bit more sketchy.
Yeah. Luckily, though, hopefully you can find a spot start in the late window.
Which is a whole 2 games.
2 games. Dolphins, Browns. And thank God, Devon Achane doesn't know how to slide. I am in our League of Record championship because of it. Actually, No, I'm
No,
in
you would have been
both.
fine anyway, but you didn't know that.
I didn't know that, but I think I won by 6 points in Couch Champs World Cup. So
Yes,
I don't know
that
how
one
that.
would have been.
Yeah, I think I might have been okay because I ended up not playing Tucker Craft because the score was so close. I left my tight end take a 0, so I might have been able to squeak one out there. But still, I know there was a couple leagues that were decided on that touchdown.
Definitely. And I think I mentioned this actually on Monday that Achan is in almost all of my league's championship games. And I think a lot of it has to do with that. And he's had a few good weeks and a few good weeks down the stretch to get people in when they were close. So
Yeah, and the Dolphins, they get to play the Browns. The Browns have not been great over the last couple days. They're playing DTR still, which is always why. But Jerome Ford is going to be the starter. So if like you need a spot start, I think you can play him. Do you like him enough to play him over guys like Tyron Tracy and uh the guy who were just Tajay Spears?
I'm sorry, what was the name again?
Jerome Ford. I know you're
Yes.
fighting the dog.
Putting the dog. Sorry, guys. Yes, Jerome Ford, I definitely do. The Dolphins haven't been a team that has been good enough lately that I think they're going to pull away from the Browns, even though the Browns haven't been good this year. DTR is the only reason it concerns me, but I'll take the volume there and go with Ford, who I've seen be explosive before and have a little bit more of a sample size on.
Yeah, I think that is a good way to
And
put it.
please just play Jameis Winston.
Yeah, that would be great.
Please.
Um, and then it's crazy how Tyreek Hill has kind of fallen from elite level. I know he's struggled the last couple weeks. He did drop a touchdown or two last week. So I think he's still in your lineup. Like, don't get too cute this weekend and not play like guys like Tyreek Hill. It is a good matchup, but uh, the Dolphins defense could also be a game-winning defense this week as well if you need a stream.
Yes, not something I would have thought of because they haven't been great most of the year. But in this matchup, prime real estate, Dolphins defense.
Alrighty. And then game of Sunday. I don't know if it'll be the game of the week, but the way the Christmas games broke down, it probably will be, but there might be a really good one on Saturday.
Sit back, relax, listen to Cody chat here.
Packers, Vikings, in a game where the Packers can't do too much. Now, if they win and then the Vikings lose to Lions next week as well, they could jump from the 6 seed to the 5 seed. With the loss, they would be fighting with the Commanders for the 7 seed. So most likely they're going to end up in the 6 seed.
Yeah.
So that's basically where we're at with the Packers. The Vikings, they need to win to stay alive in the 1 seed race as well, or a Lions loss, but they need to win. It'll be a really long time since either of these teams have split each other or swept each other. They've split most seasons. But the Vikings got the win earlier in the year. It is Toyota-thon, so the Packers are playing good, but the Vikings defense, like the big thing that concerns me, and it's not that, again, I'm not getting Nuke and not playing Josh Jacobs because I'm definitely playing Josh Jacobs. They literally rested him for a quarter and a half last week just because it was a short week, and they know how much he means to them. But the Vikings are the second best team against the fantasy running back position, so like it might not be that high output game. Like it's gonna be hard yards. Like you're still gonna hope that they eventually get to the red zone and he gets into the touchdown, which seems pretty likely, but will be a tough matchup for him. Christian Watson doesn't seem like he's going to play, so it makes the wide receivers a little bit more easier to predict. Like it feels like Romeo Doubs would be a safe option, or a Jaden Reed, but are any of them safe in that offensive? Like it's not great if you're in a fantasy champion and have to rely on any of them. Where on the Viking side, you know what you're playing. You're playing Aaron Jones, you're playing Justin Jefferson, you're playing Jordan Addison, you're playing TJ Hawkinson.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Those Packers wide receivers are the question here for me. Watson out does help. And I'm the Jaden Reed guy. And normally I would say Jaden Reed is, but I don't think there's just been quite enough there that I would lean Dobbs. And I'm not sure he might be available in some leagues. I actually don't know what his own percentage is. I know Reed's a lot more owned because he's had a top 20 wide receiver season, but I hope you're not relying on either of them because I don't love either of them.
Yeah, I am with you. But I do think this can be a good game and it'll be a good test um, for the Packers. Some people have said like they struggled against the elite teams because all 4 losses have come to Vikings, Lions, and Eagles so
Yep.
far. So the 3 teams ahead of them. So being able to beat the Vikings would be a good morale boost for the playoffs. But either way, both these teams are in too. So it's one of those weird games where it's like they're fighting for something, but what they're fighting for isn't that important. So like a guy like Christian Watson, who's a little bit banged up, they'll probably rest him this week. Jair Alexander is going to miss another week. So that's big for like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison.
Yes, it is. So yeah, I don't know if you mentioned Addison. Addison also is a big guy who's probably gotten a lot of people here. He did have a bum week in the first round of the playoffs, but he's somebody who can go in your lineup if you need it as well. We good on there to move to Sunday night?
Let's do it.
Sunday night football, Falcons at Commanders. The Commanders obviously don't have a whole lot to play for. There's a chance they come into this game knowing that they can't win the division. That is if the Eagles beat the Cowboys. They are out of division contention. They also have a chance to know if they're really fighting for the 5 seed or the 6 seed, or if they're stuck to the 7, depending on how that Packers and Vikings game goes. The Falcons, on the other hand, still trying to lock that division up, which they can do in this game.
Yeah, the Vikings, they can't lock the division up, but they need. Or sorry, I don't know why I went back to the Vikings. I got complete. The Falcons, they need the Buccaneers to lose to lock up the division as well. But the Falcons Commanders, this should be a good game. You get to see Michael Penix Jr., which he did have a red zone interception last week, but that's one of those interceptions you don't really put on the quarterback after Kyle Pitts dropped the ball. But the thing that surprised me the most was how he still got involved. Darnell Mooney, Raymond McLeod still got targets. So it seems like that's actually more part of the offensive game plan than it is Kirk Cousins. Not that I'm playing either of them, but I think Darnell Mooney's in that Jalen McMillan kind of borderline flex play again this week. Drake London, you can play. Bijan Robinson.
He is banged up, though, so worth noting.
Hey, that's a great point. Bijan Robinson's the no-brainer. And then on the Commanders side, it's like, do they have any bit of a lull from that big comeback win against the Eagles? Do they come out to a slow start? How do they look? How do they perform? But in terms of, I guess the big question is, are you feel okay putting Brian Robinson back in your lineup after his performance against the Eagles?
I do. The Falcons defense is not as good as the Eagles defense has been. So I think you're good to put Brian Robinson back into your lineup if you did get far enough with him there. I think I was going to make a joke of like, so is Jamison Crowder also in that Jalen McMillan discussion after last week?
Yeah, I'm not going to go there.
Me neither. I was just joking.
So I would not play Jamison Crowder despite his 2 touchdowns. Just like I'm not playing Olamide Zaccheaus because he caught 2 touchdowns as well.
It's true. Terry McLaurin, who caught the 5th touchdown, 5 touchdowns for Jaden Daniels last week. Maybe he got you through and you can ride him to the championship. Terry McLaurin's good to go as well. And despite a bad week last week and a fight with Nick Sirianni, the Eagles head coach, after the game, Zach Ertz is still in the tight end dartboard conversation.
Sure.
Because it's tight ends.
Right. Monday Night Football, Lions, 49ers. We'll talk more about
Monday. Yep.
On Monday. But I think the big name that people want to know about is Deebo Samuel.
And I don't know what to tell them.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough situation. He's had less than 5 points like 5 weeks in a row, then it goes off for 21. Like, they didn't have anything to play for last week, so it's not like you can be like, well, they're still fighting on. The 49ers, it's such an interesting situation. I think Deebo, you can play him. Like, just know it's super boomer bust. And I think the nice thing is, though, like, playing Deebo, and of course, the 49ers don't have their injury report out yet as we record this on Thursday because they are the Monday night game. But playing Deebo makes it very, like, he has the highest ceiling, that like you're in it until the end in your championship. That's not like, don't put all your eggs in that basket.
Mm-mm.
But if you're debating between a guy like McMillan, Adam Thielen, and Debo Samuel, like with Debo Samuel, it's not 12 is a lot easier for him to get than the other guys. Not this year, but Debo has the easier path to getting 25 if needed. Not saying it's going to happen, but Debo would be the guy I would go in that situation.
I agree. And I was trying to look at the status of Isaac Orendo because I kind of feel like that actually helped. Lot less reliance on the run game from the 49ers last week because they just didn't have the ability to. But when we're looking at it, he is a limited participant in practice. Kind of up in the air. The problem is we're not going to know by the time all these games play what exactly is going to happen with him. But I saw Debo get a couple carries, used a little bit more in a gadget type role than we were used to seeing him in the last few months even. So I think that's what helped kind of spur that. And I don't like Debo as much without, with Garendo in the lineup, I think. Problem is we're not going to know that in time to make a lineup decision.
Yeah, I mean, you might know by Saturday if they like rule him out.
Yeah.
Before the
That'd
Sunday
be
slate.
ideal situation.
But if they get, say, questionable game time decision, you're just gonna have to pick and choose. And I'm not saying force Debo in your lineup, but if you're borderline flex play, it might not be a bad time this week.
I think what I'm going to go with here is my final answer. If you are projected to lose or you had your opponent go off in the Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday slate and you're going to need an extra push, take the ceiling with Debo. If you're kind of nursing a lead or a projected lead, play a safer option if you have it.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to put it. How about Debo and like Debo, Juwan Jennings? Obviously, most people don't have both of those guys, but like I feel like that is a good example of like depending on where you're at, where you think you might be at. A guy like Juwan Jennings, which he's had some really good weeks too. Don't get me wrong, but over the last 5 weeks, it's not been as good for him. So he's more of that safer play. You're hoping for 4 or 5 catches and a touchdown, where Debo still has the ability to take one to the house. He hasn't shown it often, but he has that ability.
Exactly. And yeah, it hasn't been as good for Juwan Jennings recently, but I still think he is the safer option. So I would still go with the exact same thing, especially if you have the option to wait all the way till Monday. If you need a boom, you're going Debo. If you need a couple of points, you're going Juwan Jennings.
Sweet. You want to do our Thursday night preview?
You have a bumper for it, so let's hit it. You're welcome. You're welcome. I didn't know if you knew.
For?
The bumper.
Oh, did you make it today?
No, but you always ask if you have it or not. So I
Oh,
figured
I was like,
I'd remind you
I
in
thought maybe
advance here.
you threw it in there quick. I was like, "Ooh, George, working on the day after Christmas. Good for you."
Yeah, Cody didn't, but
Whoa, why are you throwing me under the bus like that?
I have to.
Seahawks,
You're my co-host.
Seahawks at Bears. Very interesting game. Like traveling on a short week is never easy. Seattle's one of the furthest teams away. They're coming, not going all the way east, but coming to the central time zone to play the
But at
Bears.
8 p.m. So
Yeah, I'm not. But all I'm saying is they've had 2 big games against the Packers and Vikings the last 2 weeks. Lost both. They need to win to stay alive in fighting for their division, or they're going to be huge Cardinals fans on Saturday, which is not great for Seahawks fans. But Ken Walker has had a IR. So
yeah.
Zach Charbonnet, I know he was a little bit banged up, but he is not inactive. He's going to go tonight. So Charbonnet is in the lineup for sure. And then in terms of actual inactives, there's no one worth mentioning on either side of the ball. So a pretty healthy game outside of an offensive lineman for the Bears, but their offensive lineman has been banged up all year. So,
Man, I hope all of you out there were listening to us. And if you had Ken Walker, you were adding handcuffs and you got Zach Charbonnet. Because, I mean, we mentioned a couple of potential options at running back going through the show, but it's not too pretty. And we've seen how Zach Charbonnet can really take over a game a similar way Ken Walker can. So slam dunk play, even if he's not normally in your lineup and you kind of stole him from the Ken Walker owner, somebody you should be considering throwing in a pretty good matchup.
Yeah, I agree with that. On the Bears side, like none of them feel great, right? Like,
I'm
yeah.
gonna stick to my guns that DJ Moore has kind of been targeted the most since the offensive coordinator change. I think he's the safest. He's had a decent floor over the last month, but he's not really had the booms. So obviously you're not feeling great about it, but he hasn't been bad. I know you're in a league in a championship where you're thinking about having to play Keenan Allen, and I don't love that either, but at least the matchup is good.
So the matchup is good. It's not technically a green matchup because they're ranked 22nd, so they're right outside the top
Literally
10.
one spot out of a green matchup.
But you mentioned the targets and stuff like that. Uh the last This is the last 4 weeks for Keenan Allen. 8 targets, 5, 13, 13. DJ Moore, it was like 8, 8, 10, 10. So like those two, it's been those two. Like Roma Dunze
Yeah.
has been like an afterthought. So either of those have been the plays. Keenan Allen has caught the touchdowns. Does that regress? That I'm in 2 championship leagues. One league I'm pretty sure I'm playing Keenan, and the other league I'm gonna have to play DJ Moore. So I'm hoping one of them gets me off to a good start on Thursday. I don't love either of them. I don't think I'd play DeAndre Swift in this matchup either. I just think the Seahawks been pretty good against running backs. Swift hasn't been that guy over the last couple of weeks. So if I lose with him on my bench, I lose with him on my bench. And that's just the story of fantasy football. But it's a coin flip on which wide receiver to go.
You didn't use your saying of I could be wrong about this and I'm okay with being wrong
Yeah. I mean,
with
that's kind of,
DeAndre Swift. Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I'm okay with it.
No.
I'm okay being wrong.
The Bears putting the emphasis on the pass game and getting that many targets to those receivers, it makes me feel a lot better about playing them. And obviously there's still issues with like they could throw up a dud. The floor is pretty low, but volume is what we're looking for, especially at this time of year. Those two seem like a good option. And then Seahawks side of the ball, I think my big question I just want to talk to you about is DK Metcalf. Because I actually know of teams that have gotten through the playoffs without having to play DK Metcalf. So JSN's pretty much in your lineup. He's taken over the number 1 role right now. How are you feeling about DK Metcalf?
I feel like DK Metcalf like I do about Debo Samuel. I don't think you haven't needed him. You probably haven't. You might have played him. You might not have. Like, and it's been okay. Like, you might have found some better option. And if you did, I think I would continue to roll with that better option. Now, if you were like me, who got to play Jerry Judy instead of Debo Samuel, and now I'm stuck between Jerry Judy with DTR and Debo Samuel, I'm like, okay, well, now I think I'm going back to Debo just because Thompson can't throw the ball. Like, if you're in a situation similar to like that, heck yeah, I would go. I'd play DK over Jerry Judy, which is crazy thinking of where we are 3 weeks ago, but that's just where the times we are now. And again, like I'm not playing Jacoby Myers as good as he's been over DK Metcalf, but if you have someone like a Lad McConkey, or if you have I don't know, like a Jordan Addison, right? Like that you drafted later, I would
Mhm.
definitely keep those guys.
And it's funny because the team I'm talking about, I'm actually facing in a fantasy championship. If you know that, it's Bree, so that's nice. And she has been rolling with Jerry Judy, so that's funny that is. But then I'll throw you the hypothetical DK Metcalf or Bucky Irving.
Well, Bucky has played really well as of late. Um, that one is tough for me. I think I would still I my heart says, or I guess my gut says DK, but my head says Bucky Irving. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
statistically the better play is Bucky Irving.
And Bucky Irving's only had one down game since their bye in week 11. In half PPR, 23, 26, 2, 12, 16
Yeah.
points. So, like, he's actually been better than Rashad White has been. And I mean, I was also thinking the same way of like, I'm leaning Bucky Irving, but it feels wrong when you're in a situation where it's like, I need to come up with somebody to fill one roster spot and you have the name DK Metcalf sitting there. It feels like it should be DK Metcalf.
I think at the end of the day, the fact that we're having this conversation is makes our point.
Yeah.
The fact that we're even debating DK Metcalf, Bucky Irving.
Yes, exactly. Not saying it's something that's going to cost you if you do go DK Metcalf. He could end up doing just fine. It's been a rough year for him and for a lot of the Seattle offense if your name is not Ken Walker when he's been healthy or Jackson Smith and Jigba for the most part.
No, and I think JSN is definitely in your lineup tonight. That wraps up all the games, everything for week 8-17. Fantasy Championship weekend. Any final thoughts on Championship weekend?
We were dealt an interesting hand this year with all of the crazy time slots and games on Wednesdays, but good luck to everyone out there. If you have any other questions, make sure you hit us in the DMs. We'll do our best to help you out. Hope injuries aren't affecting you too much. And let's go win some championships, and then we'll gloat about them on Monday.
I don't know about gloating about them because that Lions 49ers game, I have a feeling that Monday at 6:30 live to answer any last minute questions, help you make that final decision to get you over the hump and into the winner's circle. We'll be back that Thursday to recap it and get you people that are playing Week 18 games ready as well. Make sure you follow us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, all those good places at the Couch TMs. I'm Cody Roadcap. That's George Kerr, and we will talk to you all next week.